And welcome back to another episode of TED Talk Stamps. So this past week we drove up to Houston. Well, not really up to Houston, we drove over to Houston. Anyways, we went to the Visa Application Center for Portugal in Houston on Tuesday morning. And as bad as everything has been before that I've related to you, this was just the opposite. It couldn't have gone any more smoothly than it did. The lady that helped us was just that, helpful. And very patient, and she got us through all the paperwork. And within an hour, my wife and I both had our paperwork packets completed, and they were on their way to Washington, D.C., to the Portuguese consulate. Now all we have to do is sit back and wait for another 60 days or so. But anyways, it's a big load off our shoulders right now, and we're feeling a lot better. So this week I'm going to continue. As you saw in my last episode, I had another stack of mail to go through, another stack of stamp orders. And that's going to take up this whole episode. As I went through them, I found some mistakes that I had made and some regrets of the purchase, although nothing major. But I thought I'll just go over them in a little more detail, and maybe you can, take away a couple of lessons from my experience to make it go a little more smoothly and quicker. I'm not going to go through each envelope like I did last time. Here is the stock page full of all the stamps that I got in that bundle. And you'll notice one that's backside. The backside is facing up, and you see a spot. I've got a little more to talk about that one. So here, in a little more detail, is what I've gotten. First off is this set of 4 postage due set from Botswana, issued in 1971. Now, by and large, I tend to ignore postage due stamps. I just don't like them. I find the designs dull and uninteresting. This set, on the other hand, as you can see, is anything but. Stamps feature a nice frame-filling view of an African elephant, although it's not an engraved set, which would have made it even nicer. It's still a pretty nice set, and I just had to get them. Next, from Haiti, from 1933, comes this airmail stamp, Scott C4A, and that is an uppercase A. Now, in case you're not familiar with the Scott numbering system, the C prefix stands for airmail stamps. A lot of stamps have suffixes added to them too. In this case, a uppercase A, and a lot of them, most of the suffixes are lowercase a or b or c. The lowercase letters just stand for variants of the main stamp, either a perforation variant or a watermark variant or a slight shade difference. Now the uppercase A in this case, that means that the Scott catalog editors, back when they cataloged these stamps originally, there was already a C4, and there was already C5 and C6 and C7, and this stamp caught them by surprise. It was issued, or maybe not issued later, but they found out about it later. And Scott likes to keep everything usually in chronological order, and so this actually was released between C4 and C5, so they just shoehorned it in between them and stuck a uppercase A suffix on it. So what this stamp is, it is a commemorative stamp for the first nonstop flight between New York and Haiti, Port-au-Prince. And this occurred on June 10th and 11th of 1933. The flight took just over 24 hours. 24 hours and 8 minutes. The pilots were Errol Boyd and Robert Lyon, and they flew a Wright Bellanca WB-2. So this stamp marks the occasion. For the stamp, they used a stamp issued actually 8 years earlier, 1924, which is actually 9 years earlier, right? Do the math. They just happened to have this stamp, Scott number 317, which shows a map of the U.S. and the Caribbean. So this was the perfect stamp to use for the overprint. Now only 500,000 stamps were overprinted. So it's not a very common stamp. And in fact, right now there's only 2 of these stamps listed on Hip Stamp. One a mint hinged copy and the other one mint never hinged. And I like Haiti as a more or less a minor country collecting area. So that's why I picked up this one. Next, this is my first mistake. This is Danzig number 194, issued in 1932. I don't know why I put this in my shopping cart, actually. It's poorly centered, and the cancel was clearly labeled by the dealer as a CTO, or cancel to order, which means it's not a cancel from actually being postally used. So like I said, I don't know why I got it. Maybe it was just to pad my order, to just because I had only had a stamp or 2, and I added this one. The next stamp is Germany 383 used from 1928. This is the second to the highest value in the 19 stamp President Hindenburg definitive set, and it has a nice CDS or circular date stamp cancel. And then moving on, these 2 stamps, these are Switzerland 59 used and 84B used. There's the small lowercase letter suffix that I explained about Haiti. The reason being that Scott number 84 had a certain watermark and perf gauge. 84A had a different watermark, and then 84B has a different watermark and a different perf gauge. I bought these because they have pretty decent centering, and the perforations are nice all around. It's tough to find these 19th century issues with nicely defined perforations. Also, it didn't hurt that I got each of them for less than 10% of Scott catalog value. Now, Switzerland, for some reason, has a tendency to sell for a lower percentage of Scott catalog values than a lot of other countries. But even so, at that, less than 10% value was a screaming bargain in my eyes, especially since these were pretty nice copies. Next, we have German East Africa, 3 stamps, numbers 15, 22, and 23 in the Scott catalog. The first one is used, and it has a nice CDS from Dar es Salaam in what became Tanganyika and is now Tanzania. And these are nice, clean, and bright copies, and nicely centered also. Next, I got a couple from German Southwest Africa, number 16 and 28A. And here you can find my second mistake. On the left, number 16 has a dark tone spot on the back that clearly shows through to the front side. And here's what it looks like from the back. Pretty nasty, isn't it? So how did I end up purchasing such a dog? Because this is how it looked in the sales listing. Not a trace of toning to be seen on it. And they did not show the backside. Also, it's obviously been either overexposed or overly brightened in an image editor, which is just, brightened the tone spot to where you can't even detect it. Now, because I've dealt with that dealer before and never had any problems, I just trusted him, even though I could see that it was a, overly bright image. However, I could not overlook this gaffe. This stamp cost over $8, so I've messaged him and requested a refund on my purchase. Next, we have numbers 24 and 33, and these are also nice copies showing the Kaiser's yacht. These are identical except for having different watermarks as the different catalog numbers. And although it's the same stamp except for the watermark, it does not get the lowercase letter. It didn't become 24A. I guess because a whole series of stamps was issued with this new watermark, and Scott just gave them all their own major numbers. Next we have Bavaria, numbers 2 and 10 in the Scott catalog, with nice numerical cancels. Plus they each have 4 nice wide margins, which looks really nice. So that's why they ended up in my shopping cart. Next is Bavaria 16 and 19. Again, some nice margins, although the upper right corner does get a little narrow on number 19. But it has a nice CDS showing the city of Traunstein in Bavaria. And moving along, we come to some late Bavarian issues, numbers 258 and 263. And these are a couple of overprinted issues. That's because in 1919, after a couple of brief periods, being the People's State of Bavaria, and for a shorter period, the Bavarian Soviet Republic, the Bombay Constitution was enacted, and the Free State of Bavaria became part of the Weimar Republic. And we have Bavarian stamps overprinted Deutsches Reich, marking the end of Bavaria as an independent stamp issuing state. And then the final few stamps in this batch were these 3 from the German offices in the Turkish Empire, numbers 14, 16 in mint condition and number 32 used. The mint copies have nice fresh color and clean perforations all around. The used copy, that's my final mistake. Somehow my mind was completely absent when I stuck this one in my shopping cart. The problem is that the stamp shown here is not the one that was shown in the sales listing. In fact, the stamp shown in the listing was not even a used stamp. It was the same scan as number 14 on the left end of this set. The dealer had mistakenly kept this scan when he made the new listing for number 32 used. And somehow I completely overlooked that fact. While this is not really a terrible copy, it's not one that I would have been interested in buying had I seen the actual image. So this mistake is really on me, and I'll go ahead and keep the stamp since it was a cheap one anyways. It's no big deal. So there you have it, the last batch of stamps I've received in the mail. I hope you've taken away a couple of lessons from my mistakes. Inspect everything in your shopping cart before you push that PayPal to purchase button. Make sure every stamp in there is one that you really want. Beware of obviously enhanced images like this one. Don't be afraid to contact the dealer and ask for a better scan of the front and the back. And then don't get in a hurry. I purchased this stamp just based on the description and really didn't, examine the image too closely. So I never realized it was obviously the wrong image. So don't get in a hurry. And that does it for this week. But next week, I'm going to have a live Zoom chat with probably the foremost expert on crash covers. Crash covers, for those who are not familiar, are the mail that went down, crashed, and burned. Sometimes they burn, sometimes they don't. But it can be airplane crash, it could be a train wreck, it could be a ship that sunk. They all kind of come under the general umbrella term crash covers. So be here in 1 week's time for that one. Hope to see you there. Until next time, this is Ted the Talking Stamp Collector wishing you all happy stamping.